Welcome to the new Tierlist video, patch 9.07. Once again, checking through the tier list. I know it has been some time, it has been some patches actually since the last tier list video, but now we're back here once again in old fashion. We're gonna go through the tier lists. I have prepared them, I have updated them tonight and yesterday, and we're gonna go through the significant changes. I'm gonna talk a little bit on why some units are quite good in the current meta, and same for the Mastermind options as well as the Legion spells. So let's get right into it, starting with the units tier list. And I think the first unit to point out, and I think it didn't change since the last tier list, but it's just even a bit better at the moment, even though there were no changes to the unit in specific. We have the Firelord at the top. First of all, it's very important to mention Firelord is not the OP unit here, but it is Fenix. Firelord is actually pretty much balanced. I would probably put it like A tier on its own, maybe a B tier, because it actually is balanced, and you do not really play the Firelord unless you like go Graal into Firelord for the early game. Like wave 5, wave 6 is quite strong waves, obviously 3 and 4 as well. But the Fenix is the unit you want to look at. If you don't know about how to position your Fenix correctly, I made a Legion in short video about this, gonna link it down in the description for you. But just as a rough sum up, Firelord, or the Fenix in specific, is just good on so many waves in the mid game at the moment. You do have 12. If you protect it correct with the splitting video, it's good on 12, it's obviously good on 13, it's actually decent on 14 as well if you split it correct, and if you especially have the support of Tempest, just a perfect synergy. It's good 15, it's good 16, it's quite weak 17, but you do still have the powerhouse on 18 again, and you already see it's really good on a lot of waves, and on top of this it is actually good on all the 3 meta waves, or all the 3 waves that are currently very strong against the king, which are 13, 15, 18. Those waves in particular are very strong against the king due to the recent changes to Giant Slayer, which is additional damage the king deals based on the unit's max HP, and since this got reduced, those waves are a bigger threat to the king at the moment, and Fenix is just amazing on all those 3 waves, and this is why Fenix is by far the best unit at the moment in the game. So it is a strong unit on its own, plus perfectly countering the meta. This is why Fenix is at the top. Okay. Next on, well, we have Priestess, still a very good opener. It does counter a lot of those waves I just named as well, right? It's decent on 13, good on 15, good on 18, so a lot of waves, plus insane opener, absolute S tier opener for high elo at least. Well, Trinity Archer, just still a lot of good DPS output. We have the Bone Warrior, it just is so versatile. Bone Crusher is still an amazing opener. You do have a Dark Mage option. Bone Crusher just a very solid unit, especially due to the 3 upgrade possibilities and the heal for the early game. And new to the S tier is the Angler. Why is Angler that good at the moment? So often people do make the mistake and concentrate on those stacks too much on the Angler, but if nowadays it just gets so many stacks due to the 2 stacks on the Angler per kill or per unit dying around it, you just get a lot of stacks in the early game already. So often you do have openers like Gateguard Angler, Crusher Angler, or many more. You can just put 1 or 2 Anglers down, get some free stacks in the early game, later on upgrade them to the bounty, and then get some Kingpins with like 75 to 100 stacks for free. They have insane HP per gold comparable to a Golem, and then around double the DPS per gold if they're around 100 stacks. So really, really strong choice as a fortified tank if you have it. Very well scaling, so definitely a very strong unit at the moment. Okay, we've now discussed all the 5 S tier units, and now I'm just gonna point out some more changes I made in the other list, in the other tiers, because I think it's a bit too complicated to go through all of them one by one, because often the position didn't really change. I think one unit you're all interested in is the Cursed Casket. And I actually put it very high in A tier, and it does have a single reason, or a few reasons. First of all, it does have DPS per gold or a good tank, a good arcane tank. A little bit less than a Badger if I'm correct, but overall still very, very good deep HP per gold, which is making it a very strong tank. On top of this, it does have this amazing ability, which is not only good for the early game. You can open it with it. 3 and 4 is actually quite good with it, but you do have those massive problems 5 and 7. This is why I personally love to place it for 7, maybe even get the first upgrade done. So you invest 230 gold for actually a very strong unit on wave 7, for example. You do have a good tank, you do have decent DPS output, you do have a very good AoE synergy with the unit due to the AoE effect it does. It is good later on, especially 14. The unit is very strong on 14. If you have multiple of them, good tanks plus good DPS, very nice to have. And even on later waves like 16 or 17, due to the AoE effect, it can be really, really valuable. So this is why I think it is actually A tier. It might be around balanced if you like think of the unit apart from the meta, because I think due to the meta changes, it actually like really helps. You often want to send 15, so you might already want to commit on 15, and so the unit that is good on 14 and 15 or somewhat good there often helps to like give your opponent the idea behind being good on 14, so they have to send 15 and then you can build for 15 and stuff like this. So some mind games into it, but the unit overall is just very good apart from that as well. Well, we have the ceiling. I'm not quite sure where it did stand last patch or last tier list, but it's an A tier for me. It's not necessarily because I think it's like OP or anything. So I'm 100% certain that the small ones, the seedling itself, is very, very strong. Like I've seen builds, 6 workers, have a cat, have 3 of the seedlings behind, and it's just smashing wave 3 due to the AoE effect it does. But obviously you will need a bigger tank in front of it. But I have looked at the stats of Sakura quite often, and you can check those stats at legionlord.com. And if you go for like high elo games, 2.6k average elo plus, you actually see that the win rate is skyrocketing. I think the last time I checked it, it was like 70 to 75% win rate on this unit. And starting with that, I actually started to play Sakura a bit more often, especially with like more defensive spells, so like Castle sometimes even. And it does work out really, really well. So you can play a little bit more passive in the early game. You will still have a decent amount of workers if you have those protection for wave 7 and 8. And then you will have a very strong unit later on, and it scales very well. So I was convinced by the actual win rate, so I tried it out, and I think it's a very strong unit at the moment. Alright. One unit that did get a down rank, in fact, is the gun. And the gun did not get changed, but the meta changed, right? I just talked about the 13, 15, 18, and well, gun is bad in all 3 of those waves. Usually those were the waves you wanted to send against the gun, obviously 11 as well, which didn't really change in that fashion, but you have 13, 15, 18, guns always bad on those waves. Usually the gun builds don't really support to hold those waves too good, or you will have a lot of struggles on those. This is why gun, even though it is a very strong opener still, is downranking from A to B because of those meta changes, where 13, 15, and 18 are just too strong overall, and especially very good against the king as well. Another change that is actually quite curious is the Harpy. I was actually overrating Harpy a bit. The problem with Harpy is, I think the unit overall is good. It does scale very well early mid game, but at the moment, once again, meta, right, you have 13, 15, 18, Harpy's all bad on those waves, and you will always need a support like Orchids, which is a perfect support for Harpy anyway, but you would basically need them in the role to make Harpy good on those waves. Maybe a Fatalizer could work as well, but Orchids are by far the best ad for Harpies to be good on those waves, plus to snipe out big tanks. So I think Harpies just has to be a D rank, while, for example, the Bazooka's getting an up rank, being good on 13 and 15. So I think it already represents that the units actually mainly didn't change too much in the tier list because of their changes in the previous patch, but actually the main factor for most of those units balancing is only based on the changes made on the king and the damage output of the king. One unit that got affected by this, for example, is the Berserker, right? Berserker being good on 13, Berserker being good on 18 makes the Berserker just a little bit better. I think it's still a quite weak opener if you do not have the perfect adds, especially if you compare it to older days where Berserker Coiler was probably the tier S opener you wanted to go for. And this is why I think Berserker does deserve this up rank from D tier. And for example, the Wanderer, who I said was C tier before, is now getting down to D tier just based on the fact, once again, bad on 13, bad on 15, bad on 18, and overall just not a good and convincing unit at all. Alright, I think we have discussed the most important points in the units tier list. Maybe one thing you could add is that a lot of people are complaining about Avenger and Sovereign, especially the Sovereign, that it's too weak. But according to the stat and to my experience, a Sovereign is still amazing on 13 and 14, and obviously a lot weaker on other ways. But I feel that people just have to understand that it's less of a carry nowadays, but more of a tank or off tank. Because the main focus on its passive is now gain extra HP by taking damage, which makes it a perfect off tank. Alright, let's hop over to the Mastermind options. Here actually a lot didn't change, right? Let's be honest, those Mastermind options are a little bit shaky. The Cartel here, they're not sorted, so the Cartel could more likely be swapped with a cash out, but Cartel is like very much between 2 and 3. Let me tell you why Cartel is still up there, which is the same reason why Fiesta is now 4 and no 5 anymore. A lot of players now started to play Fiesta more, and it is a very strong synergy in a duo, especially with Cartel. And this is why I did leave Cartel in 2, even though I would rather put it in tier 3. And this is as well why I did put Fiesta from 5 to 4, because those two spells have a very strong synergy. The synergy behind it is one player is playing Fiesta, the other one is playing Cartel. And as you know, a Cartel player wants a long early game to push a lot there and play a lot with the extra income it does get from the time for the first 10 waves. And Fiesta is just perfectly to enable this, right? You can get a lot of long waves due to the leaks, you want a long early game yourself to snowball, and this is exactly why those spells just perfectly synergize. It's a quite common playstyle to play those two together in tournament lobbies, so we often see duos go Cartel Fiesta. I think Drake Lucy played this in the last Nova Cup. We have Lucy overall playing a lot of Fiesta anyway at the moment. We have some accounts of some high elo players that only spam Fiesta, for example, Toykan spams a lot of Fiesta, so that's a quite prominent example for that. Apart from that, nothing changed here. Reed is still the #1 option, just least variety. Like, you usually get a decent overall spell. YOLO is still a very good option to like learn, and sometimes very good options for like a lot of flexible players. Boone is a very good example for this, who's mainly playing YOLO, I think like 90% of his games. And apart from this, I would consider Cash Out the second best option. Obviously, as I said, the options here are not sorted, so forgive me on that. But Greed and Cash Out seem to be the two most solid options to go for. Talking about Legion spells. Not too much change here as well. I mean, we did not have a new Legion spell, but there's still some things I did show and some things I want to talk about. First of all, we have a new appearance in the S tier, which is Pawn Shop. And Pawn Shop is quite similar to the Sacrifice, which I still consider probably the best spell, especially in competitive high elo play because of the versatility you have at the moment. You just can sell a whole banana bank and swap it for a Fenix from 12 to 13, for example, and so on. Like, you have so many options to use with this spell. You have the mind games, you get some gold immediately, you have something to go for later on, so it's just a perfect spell overall. Pawn Shop, pretty much the same. You do have the option to like really commit to one way fully in the late game, which is often like useful. For example, if you want to go 18 but you fear on 17, let's say this as an example, and then you just build havens only, and then afterwards you go whatever. So there's a lot of options you can go for. Last time we were talking about Glacial Touch, which was the #1 spell, and when it came out, it was the #1 spell that ever existed. It was broken as hell, and I think now the damage is around like 40% from what it was when it came out. I'm not quite sure how much it is at the moment, but it's still a very, very strong spell. The AoE effect is still amazing. You still do have the option to like really take out one unit in particular or win a race due to the slowdown. So the spell overall is still very, very strong. One spell that is not too strong overall is Sorcerer. So Sorcerer doesn't really have a lot of targets you want to have it on. So there's maybe like 3 targets, and one in particular. You have Starcaller Sorcerer with Steez, very good unit just due to the percentual damage you have. You have Sorcerer with Seria, pretty good, and sometimes even Banana Haven, depending on how the game goes and what other options you have to defend yourself in like 12, for example. But a Sorcerer Haven is usually a very good unit, or very good unit spell synergy to go for. Alright, one last example I want to name here because I saw it, in my eyes, made wrong in recent games, is Divine Blessing. I know often you want to go for some, I don't know, you want to take income with investment, or you want to get giant snares, but for some units, Divine Blessing is just the #1 option if you want it or not. And those units are at the moment obviously Fenix, and even more important, and the #1 pick for Divine Blessing. If there's Divine Blessing in the game and you have an Asaria, which is positioned to tank, which most, especially higher Eater players, should be able to, I hope you are able to as well, is Asaria Divine Blessing, right? There's no better option for a Divine Blessing than an Asaria. Why is that the case? The Asaria spell takes max HP for the regeneration, which means Divine Blessing 2.4k HP on top. Obviously, the spell is getting buffed, plus it's doubling up, as far as I know, the attack speed, and Divine Blessing gives attack speed as well. So you have a unit, you want to have it as a tank, you get regeneration based on max HP, and you get doubling up the attack speed for the spell as well. So there's no better unit than an Asaria with Divine Blessing. It's a monster unit with Divine Blessing. It's just not gonna die if you didn't fuck it up totally and don't get a massive send. So this is your choice to go for Divine Blessing if you have Asaria in the game. And I think that's it. I think we've now had a nice rundown over the 3 current tier lists. Let me know your opinion. I know often the tier lists are a little bit more controversial on my account, since, well, it's a lot of personal feelings on those units. It's like my preferences, what spells do I like to play, and now the hardcore Fiesta player is gonna mold at me because it put Fiesta on rank 4 or whatever. So take it as my personal opinion on those units, on those spells, and on those Mastermind options. I would be glad to hear about your opinion on this tier list, and yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.